Hi, I just want to touch base with you on this week in ethical leadership. And I know that already we've got some posts rolling in on the Mean Girls discussion board and some really interesting takes on all that was going on there. I want to encourage you as you're engaging your colleagues to be very specific in identifying those colleagues of yours that had particularly interesting points. But don't stray too far away from these three different languages that we're going to be using to talk about leadership ethics. I want you to talk about whether it's schema theory or decision-making models or frames. I want you to cast the Mean Girls case study in one of those ways and use that as a tool, not only to help you think through it, but also to help the entire group have some common language to talk about this case study. And also to keep in mind that even though I may not have been explicit about identifying what you would do differently necessarily, I do want that to be a focus for you to think through where are the pressure points in this case. Who are the major players? That's a pressure point. What are the critical moments in time? That's a pressure point. How do you identify those? And in those moments, what might have happened differently that could have led to a better result. So, but so far off to a nice start. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with there. And I wanted to look back a little bit and then look ahead some. So looking back, we spent some time in class talking about moral failure a couple weeks ago, and you spent some time in class talking with each other about some moral failures that you've experienced, and we had a conversation about how to think about moral failure, and this was based on the assignment that's available through the website. So you're just keeping in mind that coming off of that you were supposed to think of some other moral failures that you've experienced and draw from those and describe those, and then go through the exercises in the assignment to try to tease out some of the obstacles that you feel that you have or have historically had for making strong moral decisions or acting. I think is probably the more important issue is acting on what you decide is the morally right thing to do. Try to assess why those were obstacles that affected you the way they did, and think about whether or not you're still susceptible to the same kinds of problems. And if so, what kind of working plan you would need to create to help you be less susceptible, an improvement plan of sorts. So that's how we're thinking about that. That's work that should be ongoing. I just want to refocus you back in that direction in case you've lost track of it a bit since we've been together, and definitely if you haven't been working on it, or if you've taken a little pause, it's a good time to revisit that and keep it nice and fresh in your mind. Now, moving forward, you're going to be working on the Mean Girls case study over the course of the next day or so, and then next week we're going to meet back in class. We'll get to see each other live and in person again, and we're going to talk about shaping a culture of ethics. So in this class we're talking about ways that school leaders and teachers and parents and other community leaders can help create an ethical culture and within their organization. So you have 2 chapters in Strike, and then a chapter or an article by Damon that I think is fairly easily accessible. So I don't have any specific reading instructions for that article. Just read the whole article. When we kick off class in person next week, I'm first going to ask for 3 volunteers just to give us a brief summary of what they pulled out of each of those 3 readings. So be prepared. Hopefully people will just be ready to volunteer and jump in. If not, I'll just call on people and I'll get 3 people to share their ideas about those three readings to set the table. And then we're going to have a seminar approach to class where we're actually just going to have a graduate discussion about the readings. I'm going to ask you to think about how you can shape culture positively, ethical culture in your organizations. I'd also like you to think about ways in which people get in the way of doing that successfully. So that'll be the topic of conversation next week. Then we'll move online. We'll talk about building democratic community and the role that democratic principles play in moral education and ethical culture. And before you know it, will be Thanksgiving and the last day of class. So things are really coming down the home stretch here, which is why I wanted to do two things today. Make sure that I'm really reminding you to use the 3 languages, so you're practiced in that, and reminding you, pushing you a little bit to get back into that moral failure assignment, so it's not something you're scrambling to do at the last second. Looking forward to reading your work on the Mean Girls case study and seeing you online.